So welcome everybody to our first Teaching with Technology webinar of the semester. We've got a really excellent one coming up today, Giving Effective Written Feedback in Canvas. I'm Sam Edelman from the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I will be your host and MC today. But first, a few housekeeping items before we actually get started. So if you have any sound problems with your microphone, click on the audio button to do the audio check, to check that out. It's above the chat window, I believe. If you have any other technical issues, please call WebEx support. You can see the number there, 1-866-229-3239. And if you need to temporarily leave the session, in the emoticons menu, there's a little coffee cup. And just click on that to let us know that you've temporarily left. And just a few guidelines as we're going. So if you'd like to ask a question, if you'll click the hand icon, that'll tell us that, that you want to ask a question. But feel free to type any comments or questions into chat. And finally, we are recording the session, and we will be posting and sending the link to you tomorrow or the next day. So now I would like to introduce our speaker, Kiran Budhrani. Kiran is a graduate research assistant here in the Center for Teaching and Learning, and she's currently pursuing her EDD in educational leadership. She was formerly an assistant professor in instructional design, instructional media, and e-learning development. For the past 10 years, she's been training teachers and instructional designers to effectively use learning technologies and multimedia for course design, delivery, and assessment. So please join me in welcoming Kiran.
Thanks, Sam. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. And thank you for sharing your lunch break. I know that this is a bit of a challenge, but I really appreciate your attendance here. And on behalf of CTL, we thank you. Today's topic would be about feedback. So I'm going to share my screen. So give me a second to do that. And in a minute or two, the screen would probably change to my desktop.
So could you give a in the next to your name if you can see Kiran's screen right now? Just go ahead and give a check mark. Excellent. Well, I think we're okay. So, okay, go ahead. Take it away, Kiran.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to start with just thinking about the most important word today, which is feedback. So my first question that I'd like us to think about is, what is the purpose of feedback? Why do we offer feedback? Why do students need it? I'd like us to take a minute or two to type in a few keywords over the chat window on what you think would be the purpose of feedback. Okay, we see Jennifer sharing that feedback is about growth, accuracy, and encouragement. Anyone else would like to add to the conversation? Going once? Okay, thanks, Jennifer. I think Jennifer raised three really great ideas here. When we talk about feedback, we really have a purpose in mind where we're trying to improve somebody in terms of their development. So here we're looking at how they're going to grow. We want to maybe improve in their area of accuracy And really encouragement to give some positive feedback is quite important as well. As an online instructor today in higher education, many of us have some dilemmas on how feedback could be effective. The most common feedback that students receive from instructors would be grades. While they are highly important, grades are never usually enough. Even somebody who got a perfect score, such as 20 over 20 or 100 over 100, would want to know how well they did. They're looking for that praise or encouragement from the faculty that I did such a good job. Why do you think I did such a good job? So grade is never enough. And when we talk about feedback online, the most common format is it's written. We type this up or we send a message, and this is a form of written feedback. And it's best when it is personal or individualized. So the more we can give feedback to individual students, the better. While we have a reality that we can have really large classes and that can be a challenge, and others may have smaller classes and it may be something very achievable every day. We just have to find a balance on who needs the feedback when. So feedback really takes time. And if we have many students, it takes effort to gauge everyone individually and give appropriate feedback when necessary. The key to feedback is being timely. They say that feedback is a moment of learning, right? And when there's a moment of learning, it has to be at that right time when the student receives that learning, so that suddenly it makes sense. If feedback is delayed, what happens is that learning is forgotten. The moment is forgotten. And rarely would we see much change if the feedback was delayed. So I wouldn't stress, I want to stress this so much that timeliness is quite important. While it takes time to write feedback, being timely is also is something that we must remember. And if we are timely enough, we will see growth and improvement, and this is usually in the form of revisions or monitoring that we do with our students. So today's webinar, we're going to focus on a few key points. I'm going to introduce to you the feedback continuum, which is really the different types of feedback. From there, I'm going to move into a demo of how we use Canvas to deliver this feedback through annotations. And then I'm going to narrow down on what's the difference between specific and general feedback, and then common annotation mistakes to avoid. So when we say annotation, this is usually the remarks that we give to students when they give us submissions. Okay, let's start with the continuum. Usually when we talk about feedback, the most common feedback that we receive or see is corrective feedback. Corrective feedback is given to help students target their weak areas. This usually comes in the form of comments that we give, written comments, sometimes verbal comments, depending on the kind of communication you have with your student online. And more often, they are constructive critiques or constructive feedback. The goal is to improve something that was not done at standard. And this is very common. Many students expect feedback to often be a correction. But we also have the other side of the continuum, which we may forget sometimes, of positive feedback. While a lot of students do need help over time to improve their skills and abilities, we do also want to mark or spot their strengths. When a student knows that he or she is good in something, that's often motivation to do better. And we can give positive feedback through praise and encouragement, saying that you did a good job or well done on this certain piece, just gives motivation, and we should not forget that. In the middle of the continuum is feedback on formatting. Now, I don't want to miss formatting, because while feedback can be often on how students form ideas or explain ideas or write their ideas down on paper, we we cannot forego this aspect of spelling and grammar, which is, one of the aspects that many students do have difficulty in. And I noticed that when I was teaching my class last semester, that students do need that extra layer of feedback from every faculty. That's not something they learn only in English class. So I added that somewhere in the middle, which could be positive or corrective as well. So today's demo on Canvas will focus on this framework. I'm going to show you how to give some corrective feedback. I'm going to also look into some positive feedback and some formatting feedback. And what tools could you use through Canvas to actually relay this information to your students? So let's take a course as an example. This is my course. My course last semester was EIST 4100, and the focus is on computer applications. Let's assume that this course had begun this semester and it's their first week of class. On the first week of class, I gave my students an assignment. So I'd click on assignments to view what assignment was given, and the assignment was called Individual Report on Smart Learning. So the assignment was by nature a report that each student had to submit. So this is due this Sunday on January 22nd at 11:59. But I want to go in and see if there was anybody who submitted their assignment so far. In order to see this, I'm able to click on the SpeedGrader link to view what students have submitted. SpeedGrader is built into Canvas, allowing us to view documents live online. And very nicely, we could see here a sample student who submitted their first report. Just take a moment to look at what they had submitted. It looks like they have written something on the concept of smart learning. And as we scroll down to the page, I know only I can scroll. I'm aware that you're not able to. So I'm just showing you the entire submission. It looks like a one-page report on the concept of smart learning. Now, we're not going to go into what smart learning is for the topic of this webinar, but we're going to talk about how do we assess this document that was sent to us, right? So the first thing I would do as a framework is I'm always looking at positives and I'm also looking at negatives, because I'm not forcefully looking at negative, but if negative items arise, I park that in my mind. So I read through it and I look at what did the student do well and what did the student not do well, and I start compartmentalizing that in my mind. And on the other layer, I look at not to forget those grammar lapses every now and then. So I often start with positive feedback. Now, as you open SpeedGrader, you'll see some tools on the top. You have comment tools, drawing tools, highlighting, text, and strikeout. And for those who have never used these before, these are the tools that allow us to annotate this document that the student has submitted. It allows us to add a layer of comments over it, very similar to how we give comments or notes on Microsoft Word. So let's take an example. As I read through this document, I noticed that my student did a very good job summarizing the first paragraph. So the first thing I want to do is tell the student this. So I'd go and click on the comment drop-down box, and I'd look at three options. I have a point comment, an area comment, or a text comment. Because I want to strengthen my message and highlight that you did a good thing on the entire paragraph, I would click on the area comment. This allows me to draw a box around a large area of the document and type in a note. So I would first say, you summarize the concept well in this paragraph. So notice now that there is a text box that highlights that paragraph, and there's a note or comment attached to it. So the commenting structure of Canvas often works this way. You'd have to point to a position on the document where you'd like to add a comment, and then you would have a note pop up where you could kind of feed in information that you want the student to know specifically. Once I'm done, I can type it. If I didn't like this, I could delete if I needed to, or even have something as a follow-up to that later. So that's my first comment as something to praise the student. Now I look at the document and then I look at some formatting issues on the first line. I'm going to toggle through to make this a little larger. So there is a sort of 3 dots here that you can toggle through to make it larger if your browser is small. In your own Canvas, you'd see this when you're actually doing this live. So I'm going to do this for a second just because it would be easier to see spelling mistakes if it was larger. So notice the first line alone, right, has a mistake that the student did. So what I would do normally to catch spelling mistakes is I would go through the entire text and I would click on the highlighter. I would look for all words that have spelling mistakes and highlight them in one color. That sets a pattern for the student that every highlighted text in a certain color means spelling mistake. I often use green. So I'd click on the highlight button, I'd select green, and then I'd start looking through and I'd highlight words that have a mistake. So I'd just skim through it and I'd see, oh, concept has a spelling mistake. Paradigm has a spelling mistake. So I scroll through it even more. I noticed that learner has a spelling mistake, right? And as I look through the rest, everything else seems to be okay. So once I'm done highlighting all those words with some mistakes, I'm going to now place a comment. So this time I'm going to use the point comment. The point comment allows me to point at a specific word or section on the document, not necessarily highlight an area. So you notice how it just marks that specific section I clicked on. And now I can type in, probably I can type in something that says, I have marked incorrectly spelled words in green. Maybe I should use the word highlighted. Please make the corrections. So this saves us time to put multiple comments throughout the document. What the student knows is everything in green is a spelling mistake. So that's a good technique to guide your student, and also saves us time from constantly posting the same comment repeatedly. So you don't have to have so much redundancy in your commenting.
Kiran, could we just pause for a second? Jennifer asked the question in chat.
Sure.
Once you save a comment, can you edit it, or would you have to delete and repost a correction or modification?
Thank you, Jennifer. Let me show you something. Like here, I clicked by mistake. Every time you highlight the comment, you'll have an option to delete. You would need to delete, but if you already typed in a comment, you could go into it and add something. So for example, I want to add something here. Thank you, like just as a note. I could go in and make the edits. I could also delete and I could also edit. Both of them are possible. I hope that answered your question. If you have a follow-up question, go ahead and put it in the chat window and I'll come back to it. Okay. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the draw tool. The draw tool is something we use quite sparingly because it allows you to freeform draw something on the document. So what I use a draw tool for normally when students submit reports to me or papers is I often use it just to mark certain sections like indentation so that it's something different from a text comment. The student would not miss it. You know, the tendency is to miss it if there's too many of the same looking comments. So what I do is I draw something and then Canvas would trigger me to select complete if I want to complete the drawing or cancel to erase the drawing. In this case, I'd like to select complete, which means that my arrow is now a drawing that I could move and position wherever I need it to be. I could put it on top of the paragraph because it's an indentation mark, or I could put it on the side, right? But just in case a student didn't understand what that arrow meant, some students might need clarification, I'd go ahead and put a point comment as well, just to have the actual written text to support the visual of the arrow. Please indent, right? And then I'm done. So now the student has this feedback visually and also has the feedback in written form. So that's really cool too. Now let's talk about some critique. We've talked about some positive feedback. It's really nice to highlight a section and say that you really did well here. And then I talked about some spelling errors, so highlighting with a certain color sets a pattern for you and your student, and consistency. And then I talked about the draw tool, which allows you to make markings on the document in free form. Now I'd like to show you something I often use, the text tool. The text tool allows you to add your own text anywhere on the document. It's not the same as editing their text. The student's text is static. You cannot change what they have written, but you can mark over it. What I usually use the text tool for is to put large comments at the end of the paper. So as I look through this document, I've read this before, and I've seen that the student has put this table here, but has not really discussed the items on the table. So what I do, if this is a situation that I would experience, is I click on the text tool, and you would see that you have a sub toolbar appear, so you can have your text in different colors. I'd always go for red just because it's a critique by nature, and I'd like to make it a little bigger than their original size. Everybody usually submits size 12. I'd go for 14, and then I'd type in something like, please add subsections to your report, highlighting table 1, for example. So this way the student will not miss it, and it's not something that comes in the comment form on the right, but it really stresses it because you made it large, you made it big, you made it red, and students will not miss it. I think that's really important. Now, not to forget, you do have other features like the Strikeout Tool. So in case you think that a word needs to be, the student could do without a word, you can have the option to just encourage or suggest, maybe we can strike out this. So Strikeout just places a line over a single word. Now, going back at the bigger picture of feedback, all of the things that we have done so far are basically adding comments, highlighting, and markings on a page. And this is what we call annotation. Now, if you notice, we were working directly on the document, and this is to give very specific feedback because we want to target something directly on their idea. We want to target something that they have written, and that's where specific feedback is so important. And many times this takes time. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes us, some planning on how we're going to deliver this. But concurrently, we also don't want to forget the bigger feedback, what we call general feedback. Canvas provides you a comment box where you could give a general feedback like, please make all revisions and submit by the deadline. Right? So this allows the student to have a bigger general comment, and you could give a temporary grade or no grade if you wish, and click submit. Once this is done, the student will receive all of this information. I'd like to show you what the student sees when they receive your comments. I'm going to switch over now to the student view. Okay, so let's go to Home and Settings. Okay, I click on Student View. Oops. I think I missed that. Let's try it again. Home, Settings, Student View. Okay. Now, I would like to show you how the students receive these feedback. So you would see that the grades tab has been marked, which means I've given some feedback. And I go to the actual assignment, and you will see that the student can view feedback. If I click the view feedback, they would see the annotated document. So they receive it as a separate document with your annotations on it. I can download it as a student and save it to my laptop or just view it on screen. Okay. So going back to the concept of the feedback continuum, really we're looking at being corrective at the same time being positive, but also taking note that sometimes students need general feedback. for a large picture, you know, encouraging them about deadlines, encouraging them about mistakes on grammar. But when we want to target specific ideas and build on them, specific feedback is so much more important and very, very critical. So some examples here, for example, we want to give good feedback and we say, great job, Mark. A more specific feedback would be to tell him what he did a great job on. So Mark, you clearly summarized the concepts in this paper, keep up the good work. And that goes a little bit more personal, a little bit more individualized. And as you can see, there are other examples on the screen as well. So that summarizes this webinar. I'm going to take some questions now. We have about 5, technically 4 minutes for any questions, and I'm opening the floor if you have any questions. Okay, we have no questions so far. Well, that's good. If you have any questions about this topic moving forward, you can always contact the Center for Teaching and Learning and ask any one of the instruction designers or me, you know, if you need any help moving forward. If you need some review or to refresh the tools for annotating documents, the webinar will have a recording which will be sent to you within the week, as Sam had mentioned earlier. I thank you for your time in this webinar. And I look forward to seeing you in other webinars in the future. Sam, if you have any last minute reminders or notes, I'll give the floor to you. I wonder if Sam is still on the call or not. But if you need to go, this is the end of this webinar. Thank you very much for attending, and we hope to see you again.
Sorry, so I was going to say I'm offering you these virtual desserts since we're in the middle of lunchtime here. So please have one. They're actual and real. I came across a dessert cafe a few years ago at a conference in Vancouver that was appropriately called Death by Chocolate. So these are actual real desserts. So again, we'd just like to thank you for attending, and as Kiran said, when I had neglected to turn my mic back on, we will be sending a link to the recording next week. So thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at future CTL webinars.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.